As the engineering sector moves toward 2025, the urgent need for sustainable practices has never been more pronounced. With the challenges of climate change and rapid urbanization, integrating environmental, social, and governance principles into engineering is essential for creating resilient infrastructures that not only address current demands but also safeguard future generations. The focus of measurable impact, innovative technologies like digital twins, and a commitment to circulatory are vital strategies that will shape the industry's future in Asia. We are pleased to welcome Rodrigo Fernandes, Director of ESDG at Bentley Systems, as our guest speaker at Future IoT. With his extensive experience and insights into the evolving landscape of engineering, Fernandes will explore how firms can leverage technology and collaboration to drive sustainability initiatives beyond 2025. His expertise will provide important perspectives on transforming challenges into opportunities, ultimately positioning Asian engineering firms as leaders in sustainable development.
What we see is that more and more metrics are important in terms of sustainability. Not only in sustainability everywhere, right? Numbers are really important. So we see a lot of focus on carbon footprint, which is directly related to greenhouse gas emissions. It's also called global warming potential. It's a very common metric in sustainability. But there are other metrics depending on the industry or the sector that is being addressed. So it's very common that if you go to transportation, if you're dealing with transportation planning, you focus on vehicle congestion and the time that people will take to go from one place to the other. Of course, that's really important. But also if you go to water and if you're thinking about water supply, it's very important, and another metric is the number of people and population that is that is supplied with 24/7 clean water service, right? So you have many indicators and metrics that can be used. For instance, energy transition, which is something that is an important aspect, like producing energy. So the amount of energy that is generated, the clean energy from renewable sources, that number is also a very good indicator from a sustainability perspective, right? Also, in terms of carbon, I was mentioning carbon, but usually from a sustainability performance aspect, what is usually referred is the carbon avoided, right? What the amount of carbon that is avoided by using this approach. For instance, if we increase efficiency in one specific project or action, we can eventually identify what's the amount of carbon that we avoided by adopting this approach and this standard. One thing that is usually it's still not standardized, but many people talk about Scope 4 emissions. Scope 4 emissions, they are not part of the regular protocols for greenhouse gas emissions inventory, but if it is the carbon avoided emissions that are covered by a specific approach. So that's what we call also the Scope 4 emissions. In terms of ESG and SDG, so they are different approaches, right? So ESG is mostly focused on how companies address risk and the concerns that they can have in terms of sustainability and climate change and other aspects. So it's really important for investors to identify how a company is positioning in terms of these risks and these aspects. What doesn't work so well with ESG is the fact that it doesn't address the opportunities, the business opportunities, and all the abilities that the company can address. So I was talking about handprint, right? Handprint and how Bentley can contribute to help others. It's something that on ESG, you can put it as part of ESG, but it's not something that is usually standardized or reported in a very standardized way, right? So that's a limitation, right? So rather than just focusing on risks and concerns from internal operations, also the aspect of addressing opportunities is an important one to be addressed. Now, SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, it's also a great map, I would say, and a great vision and blueprint for what we need to do to achieve those goals. The problem and the limitation is it's mostly, it's very broad in terms of, it's mostly, it brings a perspective of a country or a city, and not from an infrastructure project, for instance, or a specific action. So it's not so easy to say something like, okay, if I do this project, I will be achieving SDG 7 in this amount or in this percentage. No, it's very broad. It's like more on the qualifying side of things than on quantifying. So it's not so quantifiable, I would say. So that's a limitation from SDGs. So, but one important aspect that I think is might be referred, with ESG and with SDG, but there's also something else coming up more and more, which is rating systems for sustainable infrastructure. They are becoming more present in infrastructure projects. Several engineering firms are already adopting those standards. One standard is called Envision rating system. It's a way that includes several metrics related with sustainability, and you can apply that to a project and to find out if this project is sustainable or not sustainable, right, based on the performance that you have on those metrics. So it's a great way that is not so broad as the SDGs, is also not so focused on internal operations like ESG, and brings a more focused for infrastructure and a way of comparing projects and to also to incentivize investors, right? So if you're an investor and if you want to make sure that you're putting your money on sustainable developments or on sustainable infrastructure, you might prioritize projects that are certified and labeled with these rating systems. Yeah, so digital twins can support infrastructure projects at multiple life cycle stages. That's an important part. So you can address design, you can address build and construct, and you can address operations. By using digital twins, you're able to make simulations, what-if scenarios, or what we call the optioneering, which are basically compare different approaches, different designs, and try to find out what would be the result of that design, either with costs, either with carbon, either with time. So we can make all those simulations, right, even before completing the design. So it can be an evolving process. So that's really important to be able to make these tests, the trial and error, while you're designing, and that's where you start taking advantage of a digital twin, right? Once you move from design to construction, you can also plan and schedule every process of construction, and when you do it, you increase efficiency. Again, you save money, you save time, but you also save resources and waste that are involved in inefficient process of construction, right? So if you optimize the whole process of construction, you can be significantly more efficient in the process of construction. And then when you go to operations and you have real-time information and monitoring of what you have on your asset, it's again where you can take advantage of specific aspects like IoT, AI, combine all those, and still models that can be physics-based models and that you can have, so that you can optimize efficiencies, reduce, for instance, water leakages that you can use with the digital twin, or reduce energy consumption, or reduce incidents. Problems that can bring safety concerns for population or all that. So anticipating and creating early warning systems with a digital twin is also part of that, right? So summarizing, digital twins for infrastructure, they can support multiple life cycle stages and allow you to establish this, this better, a more efficient and effective project delivery and management, I would say. This is a difficult question because to pick one, it's like picking, like if you have 10 sons and you need to select one as your preferred. But I think since I was talking about water leakages, and I saw yesterday the presentation of a project here from Sabesp in Brazil. It's a good example of a project where you come from the design stage, you have all your assets in operation, and then you have an organization managing a water utility that is trying to increase efficiencies or reduce inefficiencies and reduce the money that they spend on treating water and supplying water to the customer, but also the water that they lose on leakages, on unrevenue water, on incidents, pipe bursts, and all that. By installing a system or by using a system, a cloud-based solution like WaterSide, for instance, they were able to anticipate these problems, to not only to reduce, to be more confident on identifying potential water leakages by using AI for anomaly detection on the patterns that they have on flow and pressure, but they can also use the same solution to understand how the pumps, the water pumps, are performing in terms of efficiency. So they try to identify limitations and to adjust the pump efficiency so they can reduce energy consumption. So they become more efficient in terms of energy and in terms of water management. So that's just an example that comes to my mind. So circularity is a fundamental concept on sustainability right now. It's indeed, it covers multiple aspects. It allows us to be in a better position to address climate change, but also biodiversity loss, environmental pollution, and all those aspects, right? Again, circularity needs to be taken into consideration since day one when we start designing. So when you start designing, you should design to ensure that you're creating or planning an infrastructure that stays with you as long as you can, increase the life expectancy of the infrastructure. So this means selecting durable materials as well, but selecting also an approach and a design where you increase efficiencies when you go to the operational stage. So this is very relevant. So this means that you must have an approach that doesn't focus only on the short term, but also on the whole life cycle of the project. So if you design something, you need to start thinking, okay, I may need to invest more in this type of material or in this specific design or architecture, but I know that then I will increase the lifetime expectancy and that I will have less energy consumption in the process. Mm-hmm. By doing all that, by doing this optimization by design, it immediately you start seeing some advantages in circular approaches. But that's more. There's more aspects on that. Once you design and once you select durable materials, you can also select materials that are being reused, for instance. It's something that needs to be considered because we have a lot of infrastructure today. It will stay with us several decades, and we need to ensure that we reuse and we retrofit and we maintain this infrastructure as much as we can. So again, it's really important that we ensure that existing infrastructure is in good shape, in good condition, and in a way that we can keep it more and more time, and so we don't have the need to replace it, to remove it and put something new. That's the opposite of circular approach, right? So I think that's one point, and I think it's very relevant. So better design, better maintenance, ensure reusing, and a good example. It's also a project. I think it was in Philippines from Manilad. There was an example where they built a wastewater treatment plant there, and basically they used water from wastewater that is being treated and being again reused for water supply. As clean water supply. So they are not spoiling water. They are taking advantage of wastewater that is not being sent over. It's being treated and reused for drinking, which is really important when you deal with a planet with more water shortage, water scarcity, and then you have this circular approach that the one water approach, if you want. Okay, so partnerships are really important. So first of all, we know that no one alone will be able to tackle some of the challenges we have today, like climate change, right? When we talk about climate change, for instance, we are talking about greenhouse gas emissions. Greenhouse gas emissions, right now, there's a big focus on something called the Scope 3 emissions, which is emissions that are indirect emissions from organizations, which means that if I buy a service or use a service, if I want to quantify Scope 3 emissions, I need to understand what are the emissions connected with the service that I'm buying, right? So everything is connected. If we don't establish collaboration with the whole supply chain, we'll not be able to address Scope 3 emissions measurement in a good way. That's just one example of how collaboration in partnership is really important. And we saw this in, for instance, we're releasing this product for in carbon analysis that was just announced. Talking about embodied carbon, it's also talking about collaboration and partnerships, because if you're designing something and you want to quantify carbon footprint, you need to understand what are the materials or products that we will use in that design. So someone needs to give you information about the emissions that are linked to those products, right? So the whole supply chain needs to be connected, needs to be transparent, so that you can then make your own decisions and your own calculations. Also, there's another point, which is, regulations will play an important role in all these. It plays a very important role on sustainability and environment, for sure, but it's not enough. Organizations need to collaborate and to go beyond regulation, to agree, to establish agreements, to establish all these aspects. It's really key for moving forward faster. There are several ways to do that in collaboration. Again, the point is that no one alone can do anything, but Bentley Systems, and going into more detail, we developed iTwin platform, which is based on open source. The foundation is on open source, and the idea is to have interoperable ways of communicating with others and to establish exchange of data and information with that digital twin platform. So that's a way that Bentley found to enhance collaboration, interoperability, and exchange of data with others. I think that's an essential part of it. So we believe also that these standards should be as open as possible, so that everyone can understand, can contribute, and work in collaboration, and eventually change things if they are not happy with the final result, right? So open standards, standardization, interoperability are key aspects for more collaboration in the infrastructure sector, and Bentley is committed to work towards that. So one way to take advantage of these technologies to accelerate sustainability is, for instance, what we just released about embodied carbon analysis. I think it's really relevant to create tools that allow to aggregate data from multiple vendors, so that you can put all that together and then facilitate things like carbon calculation or any other type of analysis that you want to create from it. So create the ability to aggregate data and to analyze and manage those designs all together. It's just an example of how a digital twin platform that is open and interoperable contributes to a better way to avoid silos, to avoid data silos. That is really a problem on when you need to do several aspects of performance, not only on sustainability for environment, but also for economy or social aspects, right? You need to bring full context of all the data, and so it's really key to that you try to aggregate all the data as much as possible. So the regulations on sustainability are something that are part of the sector, right? Anyone working on the environmental and sustainability sector knows that regulations and the regulatory frameworks are essential, and a part of it's like the business as usual for everyone. What we see today, it's more and more regulations coming up. We see more in different parts of the world. Sometimes they come in different velocities, right? Regulations in Europe will not go at the same speed as in Asia or in the US or Australia. They have different speeds, but one way or another they will converge to something that will be relevant, and they send the same message, right, to the industries. So we cannot expect anything else than more regulations coming up on sustainability, and the sector needs to be prepared on that, needs to address that. So I think that's a perspective that we need to address, not only Bentley, but any company that operates in this sector needs to be ahead of regulations. Regulations are only one part of the problem, right? The problem goes beyond that. Any organization needs to ensure that it is future-proof, if you want, needs to see sustainability as an opportunity, as a way of ensuring that the business will stay longer in the sector. So regulations are just what you have now, and for Bentley, regulations indeed are one of the variables that we have. For us, what's really important is that we help our users achieving their objectives, and in terms of sustainability, we need to do much more than just looking to regulations, right? For us, for instance, in terms of carbon analysis, it's just a perfect example of going beyond regulations. In many cases, there's still no mandatory commitment to disclose carbon emissions, right? But we can do more, and we can allow organizations to optimize carbon emissions. So we do believe that organizations that don't position themselves as an industry or as a business company that is not addressing sustainability, one way or another will feel the pressure from consumers, will feel the pressure from investors, from other entities that are beyond regulations, right? So they need to adjust to that. And so for us, Bentley, we just feel that we need to future-proof ourselves on those aspects, so that we can stay in this sector for another 40 years or more in good shape.